Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. As you know, this week I'm covering lots of stuff from NAIC this week, and today it's Rapid Strike Box's turn. The deck which really took everyone by surprise to win NAIC by Cyrus's absolutely dominating performance in top 8. So we're going to break down exactly her decision making in her deck sort of profile, as well as looking at how it will shape up in the rest of the meta, how it's going to evolve, and obviously where it was before this tournament even started. So, if we're just looking to see how it did, well, obviously Cyrus won international championships with this deck. Honestly, incredible to see this rogue deck being rewarded. But the next placement was in top 256. Yes, that is how different and how stark it performed. Getting that far down, which is incredible to see how this deck really performed really well. The double gunner ability on Inteleon VMAX mixed with the GMAX rapid flow on the Urshifu's attack is absolutely incredible combination. That spread damage to get an extra turn through that yoga looping with Metachan V is really, really strong. Now, obviously, hitting bench damage is really, really strong because it can go through Mana Fee with the double gunner and moving energies around, damage counters around with the likes of Radiant Alakazam, but its weakness is not. Being weak to Lightning and Psychic is definitely not where you want to be. But as long as you pretty much dodge all the Gardevoirs and don't bench any Urshifus out and play, you're doing pretty okay. And if a Lugia doesn't exactly play down their Luxrays or any of the Miraidons you might kind of go around there, or the Raikus, you're in a pretty good spot overall. So, and that's exactly how Cyrus did, farming all those Arceus decks out and play, which really did perform how well their performance did. So let's look at exactly her decision making in her deck. So we do play a 3-3 line of Inteleon VMAX. Really, really strong, that double gunner ability, which makes you discard a water energy and do 2 damage counters on 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Very, very strong sort of attack in there, because it works really well with its first attack here for a pretty much 2 water energies or a rapid strike energy. You do 70 damage, and then you do 2 more for each energy return. So doing 140 is not really terrible, but that's the reason why double gunner Metachan V as well as Radiant Alakazam is really good to kind of like spread the damage out there. So that 140 becomes very, very relevant. And then obviously 2 copies of Urshifu VMAX. Obviously that Gale Thrust doing that 30 plus 90 more if it was on the bench. And then obviously that Gale, the GMAX Gale Throw to do 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Kind of going around through the mana through the likes of that double gunner is really, really strong, and Radiant Alakazam. And then you can really utilize that GMAX Wild Flow in the later turn of the game. I really like to see this because it's a different alteration of obviously Urshifu and Inteleon, which obviously has won international, so it's fun to see a different incarnation of it, as the VMAX version did in fact win. And obviously this deck does in fact play a 2-2 copy of Octillery. Octillery is really good, that rapid strike search, searching it for any of these rapid strike cards you might need. Not only is the Pokemon, the energy, some of the stadiums, even that supporter card of Karina, but you get that Echoing Horn, so you can utilize to get an extra sort of prize card from that Urshifu or even double gunner. I mentioned Metachan V, but what exactly does it do? Well, it has the Yoga Loop attack for double colorless, which puts 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Doesn't seem very good. But if you get a knockout, you get to take another turn again and start by drawing a card after you take your prizes. This is really, really powerful. You can get rid of the mana fee, and then you can kind of use the GMAX Wildfly with Urshifu. And afterwards, it's really, really strong, really powerful, really good combination in this style deck, with especially benching it, doing all of these in bench damage around. Lumineon V is really powerful because it gets any of your Pokemon you might want to have out and play it supported, like the Iridas, Manly, or even that extra healing factor with Cheryl or potentially Iona being disruptive. And obviously I mentioned Radiant Alakazam, definitely the best performing and Radiant Pokemon, which definitely was a big surprise to the meta, kind of moving around all of your damage counters on the opponent's side, went only 2 of them sadly, and kind of like removing some of the potential KO, or potentially getting that KO with that Metachan V, which is really good. Definitely a really strong board status is having Radiant Alakazam and all 3 of your Inteleon VMAXs to pretty much do 60 damage on like 2 of your opponent's Pokemon is really, really strong. Looking at some of the item cards here, we do play Energy Search and Energy Retrieval as kind of your way to search out for an energy card you might potentially need, or reuse any of your energies in your discard pile. Kind of you constantly be streaming your double gunner attack. I mentioned Echoing Horn. It's an incredibly powerful item in the style deck. Getting that extra of KO is really, really strong. Heavy Ball is really powerful. Not only does it help you get any of your Rapid Strike Pokemon you might need, but those inclusive one of that Radiant Alakazam, Lumineon, and Metachan V, it's really important to have them in your deck. So if they are prized potentially, getting a Heavy Ball to get those cards out is really key. Escape Rope I absolutely love in these style of decks, because unfortunately Tower of Waters doesn't work on your Luminion and Radiant Alakazam, you don't want to sacrifice your energy attachment to them. So kind of like removing them with Escape Rope is really good, as well as also being disruptive. Then rounding up the search cards, we do play 2 copies of Nest Ball, 3 copies of Battle VIP Pods, and 4 copies of Ultra Ball. The high count of Ultra Ball to kind of guarantee to get any of the VMAX Pokemon. You really want to have that increased chance of getting them, so that's why you play a high count of them. And then Nest Ball and Battle VIP Pass is really good in the early game, of course, with Battle VIP Pass, kind of flood the board state as much as possible. And then Nest Ball is obviously really key as well, near sort of a end game as well, potentially get that Medicham or Radiant Alakazam, which you desperately might need. Supporter cards, we do play a copy of Clara. Clara is good because it also gets back your Inteleon VMAX, which might have been died, or potentially those 2 water energies, which are hiding in a discard pile if you've used all your energy retrievals. Kreen's Focus is really good, even though you just draw until you have 6 cards in hand. It works incredibly well with the likes of, Octillery, kind of getting that search aspect with that is really strong. Cheryl is definitely a really underrated card and did really well in these Urshifu decks before. If you have you discard all your energies in play, but you heal every single damage counter from all of your evolved Pokemon. This is really, really key, especially because these Pokemon have very high HP, and you don't exactly want them to be KO'd very easily with those 2-shotting effector. So if you can nulligate that from the likes of Cheryl, you're in a really good spot. Melanie is a very strong supporter in this style deck, but having 2 copies of its Energy Accelerate as well as drawing 3 cards, there isn't too much inbuilt draw factor unless you have the likes of Artillery to kind of get any Rapid Strike cards in there. So Melanie is really good to get an extra draw factor. And obviously Iriday is really strong because not only do we focus a load on water card and Pokemon with the likes of Inteleon, Octillery, and Luminium, but we have really useful item cards as well, like the Echoing Horn and Energy Retrieval, so it's really good to find ways to get to them. Even though we have a huge of really valuable resources, Professor's Research is definitely still the strongest supporter card in this style deck. So having 2 copies of them is really, really powerful. Even though we don't have much recovery cards in there, you have to be really sparing when you can use it. And this deck likes to be very destructive at times. So a well-timed Iona is really restoring. That's why we play 3 copies of them. 3 copies of Forest Hill Stone. I really like this much more than potentially having 2 copies, which we've kind of seen a lot of them in the early style list. 3 copies of these means you can use any of your V Pokemon you haven't played to kind of use that to search for anything you might need. Do you need a Water Energy? Do you need a new Inteleon VMAX? Or potentially that Iona to be disruptive? Forest Hill Stone can get you any of those cards, which is really, really strong, and even goes through Path, which is really strong. We do play 3 copies of Tower of Water. It does go through Path to the Peak, and easy to search through it with Octillery to kind of give all our Rapid Strike Pokemon that extra free retreat, which it desperately needs. And to round out the list, we do play 4 copies of Rapid Strike Energy. Very good, sort of these double water fighting energies, which makes your Inteleon and Rapid Strike Urshifu, and as well as Medicham, can attack for only 1 energy, and 6 copies of Water Energy. These are primarily going to be focusing on that double gunner sort of ability with Inteleon, but also really helpful with their likes of Luminion as well. This is an incredible lesson. Sarah did an incredible job with her finish with the style deck. Now you might notice, where is the support if we go against a Lugia deck, or potentially a Mew? Where is your Drapion? Where is your Spiritomb? Well, I'm judging from looking at this, they pretty much went, I hope I don't face it, and they carry on that way. And that's exactly why I think this deck kind of focused on there. They know what their weakness is, and they pretty much went around that. Because if we just look at its matchups, we can see its big negative ones are definitely Gardevoir, Mew, and Lugia V-Star. These ones can hit for weakness against this deck, and definitely stuff to be really struggling against here. Because obviously you don't want to be playing around your Urshifus, but sometimes if you start with it, you give your opponent extra easy 3 prizes, and you want to be kind of not really having an Urshifus out at all if against Mew or Gardevoir. Kind of becomes a bit difficult in here, and always having that healing aspect becomes exactly where you try and navigate this negative sort of matchup. As obviously as positive ones, definitely Arceus really obviously hit for weakness, and Miraidon as well as Lost Box decks. I do think you have a lot more favored in Lost Box. By doing multiple damage into the bench for the likes of Double Gunner and moving around the damage counters with the likes of Radiant Alakazam, you can really easily get those extra manipulative prizes from the likes of Yoga Loop, which I really like in this style deck. And I think it's a really, really powerful one overall by having really decent matchups against the rest of the board as well, potentially even having a really good obviously Arceus Duraludon, which it obviously performed and dominated in the final match. So kind of looking at this deck kind of going into the future, do I think this deck does have a future in the style meta and should be a contender for Worlds? The answer is yes. It's always been that borderline in that top 10 archetype, which has kind of been going around on the Limitless online platform. So definitely this deck is going to be around here and performed incredibly well in this Paldea Evolved format. I do think it potentially could change if we see a bigger increase in Mew decks, with the likes of Spiritomb and Drapion potentially to have that extra surprises which you might desperately need. We are seeing a load more increase in the likes of Lost City, so having potentially ways out around that with the likes of Tower of Water is really, really powerful, potentially go to an extra version of it. Potentially, this could be a still good pick for World, but I think its surprise factor is definitely one it's caused, and be prepared to see a lot of this style deck on the online tournaments in the next couple of weeks leading up to Worlds. So I hope you have found this video quite helpful, kind of break down exactly Cyrus's thought process and kind of seeing exactly how I would have thought with her decisions with some of the deck choices, and talking about the matchup as well. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to join the channel, which can really help impact exactly how you can support the channel in further detail. My name is TCG. I'll be back tomorrow by talking another retro break by looking at Worlds 2015. I got so excited about obviously the return of a Nightmark style deck with United Wings. You can see exactly where Nightmarks actually came from and was exactly dominating the format. So I hope you enjoyed that video tomorrow, and I will see you guys then. Bye for now.